Everyone ends up overcomplicating these sculpting tools and the process that you actually need to know to get started. So I'm going to walk you through exactly the only things you need to know to make your first sculpts inside Blender. Let's hop straight in. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my modifiers tab, and I'm just going to add a modifier, search subdivision, so search for it, and then I'm just going to add 4, just so we have a sphere in the middle of our scene. I'm going to click on the top, click apply, or you can just press Control A while hovering on top of it. Okay, speaking of that, any buttons I press, you'll see them on the left over here. Now, to actually get over into sculpt mode, we can press Control Tab and go sculpt mode, or in the top left, we can go click on this menu over here, which has object, edit, etc. to sculpt mode. Okay, once you're in sculpt mode, along the left, you'll see a couple different tools. Along the bottom, you'll see all the brushes. And on the top, you'll see some settings like size, strength, a couple different properties. And if you want to see all of them, you can also go over to this little toolbar over here, which has all the brush settings along in a vertical line. Okay, and in the top right, you'll also have a couple extra ones like your symmetry. So if you want to have it symmetrical from this side to that side, then you can click over here on X. And once you do that, you'll see there's a little blue dot on the other side of your mesh. And you can see that's how you know there is some symmetry. Okay, now when you're sculpting, there's a few things that you might want to change about your viewport. Now, the first thing is not having this whole grid here while you're sculpting. So if you want to change any of those, you can go over here to the viewport overlays. Now you have the floor, which is the grid. You have these axes, which are showing you where the X and Y axes are. Those are kind of the only ones that you'd really need to change. But if you want to get rid of anything else like the 3D cursor, stop it from being in the center of your scene or anything like that, then you can get rid of it. Now, another thing that you want to know is how to make your sculpt to look cool while sculpting, because by default, you probably will have something that looks like this. And this might not look as nice as you want. And it doesn't also show the crevices and the shadows and all of that as nice as it could be doing. So the way to change that is to switch to a matcap. So in your viewport overlays, you have the matcap up here, and we can click over here and I have a huge list of these. Essentially, there's some GitHub repository online. I'll try to leave it linked to it down below. But essentially, there's a bunch of different matcaps. To install them, you can click on these little cog icon and click install over here on matcap. Basically, I usually will have it on probably this one, or I think I quite like this default. I think it is default now. It's kind of close to a very industry standard Blinn shader, I think, or Lambert, one of those. But essentially, it just makes your sculpt look a little bit nicer. You can also turn on cavity and shadow, but I'm not less likely to put that on for a sculpt. Okay, so now let's actually start talking about the sculpting tools. Firstly, when you have it here, you see this is your brush size. To change that, you can either change it in the top left, or you can press F. So F is for your brush size. So drag your mouse left and right, or your tablet, to change the size of your brush. Okay, now if you want to change the strength of your brush, because if you have it here and you want to make it, as you firstly, I think I mess it up. If I go to stroke, I've stabilized stroke on somehow. But yeah, so brush size, F, and then to change the strength is Shift and F. Okay, so if I bring it all the way down like that, you'll see it doesn't do much when I draw. But if I go Shift F and drag it all the way up, then you'll see it does a lot more. It's more effective. It's stronger. Okay. Now, if you're working with a tablet that has pressure sensitivity, then you can turn these properties on and off with these little pen icon. Essentially, that's the pressure. So with the strength, if you wanted to change based on your pressure, so here, if I do more, it changes how much strength it does. But I can also change strength to be constant and have the size change. So there, let's bring the strength up. You see, it's not that wide, but then if I do it, then you can see it's wider. Okay, so you can change those if you want. Now, a brush by default can allow you to add, but how do you remove from a brush? Or how do you remove material? You actually hold Control. So at the top left, you can see we have a plus and minus next to these. So if you hold Control, it will do the opposite of what it's set to. So some brushes will cut in by default. So something like the crease brush, which the hotkey is Shift C for crease. You can see by default it cuts in because it has the minus up there. So you can see other normal ones will be out by default. Then you can hold Control and Sculpt, and then that will remove. Okay. So the brushes you're most likely to need to use is C for the clay strips. You see, this is like the one you can add and you can remove some material. Then there's also Shift C for crease. So you can go and crease in your mesh like this. And if you want to sharpen an edge, you can hold Control. And then you see there, like now we sharpen an edge up like this. Okay, there you go. Then we also have the smooth brush. So if you have like drawn a lot like this, you can hold Shift and sculpt like this, or you can just press the S key and that will take you to the smooth brush. Okay, so you smooth it out like that. Then another one is the grab brush. So if I bring my brush a bit bigger, this is very good for changing the shape of stuff. So you can see like we can start dragging around to different shapes. So this is a very useful brush, and this is what you rarely use at the beginning of your project. So G for the grab brush. Then the other one I would also use quite a lot is the scrape brush. I'm not sure exactly what the hotkey is. Seems like it's Shift and T. Scrape brush. So essentially you can use it to flatten faces like this. Okay, and that's generally the brushes that I use for every single project. I'll go more in depth on this in another video, but that's kind of all you need to get started. Now, when we've done something like this, you can see all these like the faces, the vertices. It doesn't have much detail. Okay, but the whole thing with this is when you change it, it's not a very constant level of detail either. So we have two options to work with this. We have one, which is remeshing, and we have two, which is dynamesh. Okay, so dynamesh is the older one and is used a lot less now, and remesh is the newer one. So let me take you through dynamesh first, and then we can talk about remesh. So up here, you see it's Dan Topo. So Dan Topo is dynamic topology. If I enable it, you'll see Dan Topo will not preserve colors, UVs, etc. All of that. So I'm going to click enable, and off the rip, you can see if I go to edit mode, it's triangulated the whole thing. Now, what dynamic topology does is if you go zoom in and start sculpting with the clay brush with C, you can see if I sculpt like this, and if I zoom out and I sculpt again, you can see it's changed the level. So this one has a lot more vertices, and then this, because it's based on how close you are to your model, which is really nice, because if you need to change, like, I don't know, maybe working on the lips or something, then that's going to need more detail than like the back of the head. So you can zoom out and then it will have a different level of vertices. But maybe it's like, oh, you zoomed in quite a lot and it's still not enough detail. The way you can change it is by going into dynamic topology and going and changing this detail size. So if you make it smaller, so 8 pixels, you'll see now I have a higher resolution. So it needs to be enabled. So there. And if I go to like 4 pixels, you can see even more detail. Okay, and if I zoom out, then there. And if I zoom out even more, there. Okay, so that is how dynamic topology works. Now, the other one is remesh, which is a consistent amount of detail. Dynamic topology does have that, which is if you change it from subdivide collapse to, relative detail to constant detail, you can like pick a detail amount from your mesh if you already have it. So there, if I go click over here and then click on my mesh, see it says 26 detail flood fill, and if I go edit mode, you'll see everything has a consistent level of detail. Now I can also change this to remesh, which is a bit more standard now, and I can show you how it works. Essentially, to enable it or to run it is you just have to press Control R. Okay, so when I've done it, you see it has a kind of grid pattern. Now, the reason it's like this grid is because it's called a voxel remesh. So you see, if I go to front view, it's kind of very like grid-like in the topology. Okay, and to like change it, so it might be too low, too high, so I can undo that. The way you can change the size of it is either open the remesh, and then you'll see we have this voxel size, and then we can change them out over here. We can also have that eyedropper to choose the amount of detail, or the easy visual way of changing it is by pressing R. Okay, so you may have to zoom out if you don't see it, but R is how you can change the amount of detail. So it's really nice because it's a visual grid way of seeing your amount of detail, which I think is actually like really cool because it gives you a good idea of what you need to do. So R, change the amount to something like this. And then if I press Control R, you'll see now it's a consistent amount of detail across the whole mesh. Now, there's another setting I want to show you to change, which can make your life a little bit easier. So essentially, if I'm sculpting, like here, you'll see now it's kind of pivoting around the area that I'm sculpting. So if I go sculpt over here and I start pivoting, you see it's going around there. Cool. So how do we change that? So essentially by default, it doesn't do this, but if I go preferences and I go to navigation, there's orbit around selection. So if you turn that off, and also depth may be useful to have. So yeah, essentially if I go sculpt, you'll see like it's kind of orbiting around nothing. So if I go back to object mode, I'd actually have to press the this little whatever thing at the top left of my keyboard. It pulls up this and go view selected. And you see now it's like orbiting around this thing. And it's still acting a bit weird. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. So actually, I think it might be the depth option. Let's turn that off. So yeah, you see. So now this is working correctly. But if you're sculpting, like you sculpt over here, you see you're orbiting around the same point the entire time. So that might not be what you want. So if we go back, turn to preferences and turn orbit around selection. So key navigation, orbit around selection. You'll see now if I sculpt over here, now it's orbiting around that. Cool. So there, sculpt over here. Cool. So you see there. So this is a really nice thing to change just in terms of like making your life a little bit easier. There are more advanced tools that you can go through if you want to start learning them, but this is the bare minimum you need. Now, if you want to take your work further, there are different things like M for the mask tool. So you see, if I start painting, essentially what this does is I can't go and do anything in this area like this. If you want to access the tools to change the mask, you can press A and you see, so we have a smooth mask, increase, contrast, all of this. Okay. And you also have a lot of settings along the top here. Now, a quick tip for this is if you have any tools that you find throughout your process of sculpting, you can add them to a quick favorites. So if you go through and find here, like one of them is like, if you do any of these like mask settings, mask extract, because like if you want, you can go to the mask brush and then paint a little bit. If you want to extract this, you can go mask and mask extract, and you'll see here. And then now you've got a separate mesh from that. You can do this kind of things. And if you want, you can go Q and then have those settings over here. So another one I have is symmetrize. So I'm not actually sure where it is. Of course, I think I might have just gone like F3 and then just searched for symmetrize. So you can basically just right click and then add it to quick favorites. So now if I need it quickly, I can go symmetrize my mesh if I've messed up and haven't been sculpting with my symmetry on. So any tools that you find that are useful, you can add them to your quick favorites and have a menu of those tools, which is a lot nicer than having to learn every single hotkey. But if you do want to change hotkeys, so especially like these brushes, I've changed them to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Because I just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a lot easier to change than C, Shift C, G, T, like all of that kind of stuff you get. So essentially, you can just right click on them and then assign shortcut, or if it already has a hotkey, right click, change shortcut. Okay. So it used to be a thing where Blender would tell you the hotkey of the brush you're currently on. For some reason, they removed that. Okay, honestly, at this point, I can't even find the hotkeys. I don't know what Blender's been doing, but essentially, if you want to change any of the hotkeys, they will be here, and you can assign your own ones. If not, go look it up online. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Blender's been doing and why they haven't been doing it. But I mean, to be fair, to put it into context of how little I use those brushes in terms of like needing to switch them quickly, I don't even learn their hotkeys and I don't change the hotkeys for them. I think I have literally 5 custom hotkeys, which is literally the draw brush, the clay strips, the crease, and then grab and then trim. That is the main brushes I use. M for mask if you want the mask brush, and hold shift or use S for the sculpt brush. And you've literally got every single brush that you need to make most of your project. And if you don't, then you can also just click on them down here at the bottom. Cool. So I hope you found this useful and I hope you've learned a lot. Yeah, cool. I'll see you in the next video, or you can check out this video that'll be on screen about learning how to sculpt better. See you in the next one.